Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome to Rising Above Shadows of Abuse. Razar. I'm your host, Grace Ovba. It's nice to have you here again today. And this is a platform whereby we showcase subject matters relating to abuse, trauma, mental health, society, and culture. And it's a place where we help you use strategies to step into a life of healing and purpose. Today, I have the adorable and charming Ginger Crystal Faith. Welcome, Ginger. It's nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. This is a really important subject, and I'm glad that you invited me on.
You're welcome. So, I'm going to start the ball rolling by asking the question, who is Ginger? Oh, before we get into that question, let me do a bit of introduction. Ginger Crystal Faith helps women build wealth through intelligent real estate investing. She's been an investor for 30 years. She's the CEO of Global Canyon Properties and has flipped over 52 houses, two of which were featured on HGTV, an Airbnb superhost, landlady banker. She's the founder of Your Wealth Network in San Francisco Bay Area, as seen on Fox, CBS, NBC, and Yahoo Finance. Wow, that is really amazing, Ginger. Welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So I'm going to start the ball rolling by asking the question, who is Ginger Crystal Faith?
That's such a complex question, right? If we asked ourselves, any one of ourselves, who are we? We're very complex, multidimensional human beings with light and dark tendencies and with multiple aspects of our personality. Essentially, I believe your question is so important because we all have to think of our identity. The subject to rise above the shadows of abuse has to do with who we really are. And if we believe that we're valuable, that we're children of something divine, if we're children of the divine, then we are going to have a much easier time rising above and conquering and thriving and not just surviving. So to answer your question, I believe I'm a divine child of God, that I've been very blessed, that I have purpose, that I'm actually one of the many angels on the planet, the human angels. And my purpose is to spread beauty and love and wealth and mixture with pragmatism and a bit of common sense. I'm here to heal my own life and rise above my past and speak to my calling, not my past, to continue to rise toward my calling and let the past go. The past was just a challenge and an incubator to make me stronger.
Wow.
So.
That is really deep. That's profound. And that can only be expressed by the divine using you to speak the words.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask another question, and this is relating to women. How does a woman start afresh after an abusive relationship and retire affluent or affluently, especially if she has children that she needs to cater for?
Well, I don't have children, so I can speak limited, right? So I have my limitation because I don't have children. And that was an easier path for me because of that, right? However, start with your identity. I believe that learning, squirreling out some time for yourself would be critical. So even though I don't have children, I have a lot of demands on me, but every day I squirrel away 10, 15 minutes for prayer, meditation, affirmation, reading. Read the best books that will help you. Now, if you've overcome an abusive situation and you've extricated yourself, you need to be congratulated. Okay, so give yourself a pat on the back every single day, because that's not easy at all on any level. Okay, I've extricated myself from toxic situations very much, and it's not easy because there's a draw, a familiarity, and a downwards pull until you get into orbit. But it takes a while. So if you've overcome the abusive relationship, at least you've extricated yourself, you need to give yourself some space, but also start bringing in positive vibration, positive energy. There's a beautiful quote in the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it basically says, everything that's there out in the ether, good, bad, evil, beautiful, it's all there. Where are we going to focus our energy? The biggest challenge, of course, is the downward pull, right? So it's a challenge. I grew up in a toxic environment and I didn't know anything better, but it was extremely painful all the time. But I didn't know any better. But in the universe of possibilities, there's beauty and there's healing and there's good people who are kind and they're not toxic. So find them. I'm a big proponent of positive affirmations. That has changed my life. Positive affirmations. And lately, I've taken it a level and I'm declaring them verbally. The world was created with words.
Words, yeah.
Speaking out verbally. So in the morning when I pray, I don't pray in silence anymore. I pray out loud to the possibility and to the things I want to create and be a co-creator. So everything that is wrong in your life, you write it down and you write what you want. And then you commit to what you want. You take that 15 minutes in the morning and you know and affirm and pray, God, all the universal power is within you. You're just fighting the toxic, abusive mental structures that you've been thrown into or happened into or whatever. It is really a battleground of the mind. It truly is. But it's very winnable for nearly anybody. It's winnable, but you have to commit to it. So whatever was wrong in my life, and there was a big list, a big list. You know, I would write it down. What do I want? What's here? What do I want? What's here? What I want? When it comes to shame, guilt, pain, this is what I deserve. This is all I deserve. All that stuff. Yeah, that is, you need to rework your identity to know the truth. Yeah. Keep away the lies, know the truth of who you are, and affirm your future. Like affirm healing for your children, affirm a better future for your children. If you look out in the world, you will see people who came from crazy situations. I personally have several refugee friends who are very successful. They came from nothing but love in their family. And even if you didn't have love in your family, you can find it in the universal possibilities. I did not know what love was until I was about 30 years old. I had no idea. I thought it was a word, a weird word. Today I laugh, right? But it's a few years later, a lot of years later. But my mother said she loved me. You know, she was a schizophrenic alcoholic. She didn't know what that meant. She couldn't possibly know what it meant to love me. So they think that love is abuse, it's attachment, and all these sort of crazy things. Depending on the level of abuse, it's a challenge. There's variations of how deep you need to go, what kind of therapy you need. I had a ton of therapy, a ton of coaching, a ton of journaling. I'm a reader. I think it's important now. We're so blessed with podcasts, with YouTube. It's so easy now. When I started healing from my challenges, it was in the 90s. I started figuring it out in like the 90s that something was really, really wrong. And I couldn't figure out what it was. It was hard to find information. I'd go to the library for books, but you didn't have Amazon for books. You didn't have YouTube. Now there's so many. My God, we are like so unbelievably blessed that you could Google whatever your problem is and you could chat GPT your problem and it'll tell you a solution.
That's
You know,
actually true. It's
it's
absolutely
great.
correct.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And there are support groups for everything now. There wasn't then. So I truly believe our world is coming into a spiritual liberation like we've never seen before. I see it all over. Young kids know much more than I did at their age because it's available. I think that's fantastic. Not sure if I answered your question. I kind of went on
You did. Thank you. And like you said, we shall know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. That's what the Bible says. So
Yeah.
I know, like you actually explained earlier on, that it's quite important for women to know who they are, discover or rediscover your identity. That's very crucial. Then self-love, because you talked about love. What is the meaning of love? Find that out and then start building from there. You have to be authentic to yourself. So that's quite vital. And from there, you can start building back
Hmm.
what you maybe lost due to the unhealthy relationships they were involved in. Because most of the time, this is what happens when women are in unhealthy relationship. They tend to lose a lot because they are not as focused as they should be due
Hmm.
to different, like you said, different energies pulling them here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
I'm going to ask another question, not really necessarily similar to what we talked about now, but how can a woman become successful in such a competitive environment and also deal with gender challenges? Because you are, to some people, what you're doing, they'll say it's a man's world, but you're doing it effortlessly as a woman.
Yeah. It's easier now that I'm older. I'm more commanding than when I was younger. I tend to think of myself kind of like as prey when I was younger with the men. They're like, oh, look at that cute little thing and all of that. The first time I was stepped into a meeting about real estate investing, one of the men asked me if I was looking for a husband. And that was in the 90s. And I'm like, no, I'm here to learn. Is that possible? Now, of course, it's different, right? It is a challenge, especially if you're nice looking and if you're young. And you really need to understand your own value and boundaries, what it is that you want and don't want. Oftentimes, women end up having partnerships because of that. I'm in a situation where I'm very blessed because I have many male friends at this point that work with me and help me. That's the good part of being a woman in this. If you can get a nice relationship with men, the right men, they want to help you. They want to help women. So I think women need to realize that. So utilize that opportunity. And your other question was, how can women become
Uh,
successful? Or
yes, successful and deal with the gender challenges.
yeah, so being successful, I think defining what success means for you. Does it mean financial stability? Does it mean wealth? Does it mean being in financial orbit, never thinking about money again? What speaks to your heart? What are your goals? Again, in the beginning, when I started learning about real estate, it was all men giving all the talks and the presentations. And they're like, oh, you want a Learjet and you want a big mansion and you want to do this and that. None of that spoke to me. What spoke to me was having freedom, like to do what I want to do. If I want to, if I want to take care of my health, if I want to do whatever. I created my real estate and I was able to go to the gym for an hour and a half a day for many, many years because that was really important to me because I had the flexibility. Now I do red light therapy. I have a lot of flexibility in my life because I built my world, right? So defining what success means to you, looking at men as an ally and not a rival. You had also mentioned something about being competitive. And I think the most important thing about competition, there's two things. One of them is don't compare yourself to anybody else because that's a fool's game on every level. On every level, it's a fool's game. And watch out for scrolling on social media. Stay off the timeline as much as you can because it's like every other thing is an advertisement now. It used to not be on Facebook, but now it's advertising. So it kind of just like you're opening yourself to, unless you're in marketing and you want to learn strategies on marketing. But if you want to start comparing yourself, there you go. because all these successful people are giving you the highlight reels of their lives, whatever that means, right? So really look at yourself, compare yourself to your past and your future. And then that is number one when it comes to this whole thing of dealing with competition. The second thing I think is critically important is for you to know what your natural genius is. Now, if you're coming from an abusive situation, that's challenging because, like I said, my situation, I ended up in a very, very controlling religious environment where they told me my value and my self-worth was attached to the kingdom of God, and whatever they told me was right and wrong. And I didn't matter. That's what I was taught. I didn't matter. And that's very challenging. So I had to recreate my identity. So going back to identity, but cross-referencing, knowing what your natural genius is. So I didn't have parents who saw me. A lot of times that happens if a woman's abused in an abusive situation. You don't have people mirroring your good parts. You have people mirroring your dark aspects. And that's who you're seeing. You're not seeing your light. You're not seeing your natural glow. You're not seeing what's good about you. And it's really critical to see what is good about you. Once you see what's good about you, and you can do it. Again, this is focus. This is thinking about it, affirming it. You can even write an affirmation. I see what's good about me. I see my natural glow. I see God's radiance within me naturally expressing. This can be your natural thinking process over time when you clear up the toxicity. Once you get to a space that you are no longer looking at the dark parts of yourself, you start seeing the good parts of yourself. You say, oh, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. And then competition no longer becomes an issue because you're not competing, you're creating from the essence of who you are. And then that's when, the divine like really locks in with you, right? It pulls that out. And you continue affirming, I'm creating and celebrating my natural genius, and everything that I do is successful because the universe is with me or God is with me. Once you get to that place. So then competition, I tend to see that people who are competitive, they know they're good at something. And so they like the competition. It's not a bad thing. I was with a really successful Jew the other week, and we were driving by a store, and it was a store similar to his. And he said, I love competition. I went, oh, look at you. I thought, that is so cool, right? Because he's good at what he does. He's owned very successful clothing stores for 40 years. And he's great. He has beautiful clothes, and women like rip him off the shelves. He's no in competition. He doesn't worry about Amazon because he's good at what he does. But again, he is an Orthodox Jew. He's got a real solid connection with the divine. So he thinks, I love competition. And I notice that with myself. Like if I'm competing with somebody, or I'm feeling in my head that I'm competing or comparing, and that I'm comparing myself to their strength and my weakness, well, that's stupid. But if I'm comparing my best to somebody else, then it's not so bad because I can step up to the plate because I know I'm naturally good at it. And I can say, oh, they're good and I'm good. I remember Paul McCartney having an interview and talking about how John Lennon and him were in competition for writing. The two of the best writers ever, right? And I think Paul said, he was good, but I'm good. And so he just like, and so they didn't mind. Then competition is not, if you're working with your own strength and your identity, then competition is not a bad thing.
So you see competition as something healthy to kind of measure where you are at.
As long as you're working on your own gifts and you're not comparing yourself to someone else's strength and it's not your own natural strength. If you're working, so it's like apples to apples, right? So, right. So find your own natural genius. Take the Strong's aptitude test or the Enneagram, or get to know yourself, like what your strengths are. There's a lot of, personality tests and aptitude tests, and what are your strengths, and then gravitate towards those. And then once you're there, you won't mind it because the Bible says iron sharpens iron. That's a good thing.
Thank you. Actually, I view competition as not comparing myself to others because we as individuals have our strengths and our weaknesses. For me, I see competition as what can I do to improve myself? Yesterday I did this. What can I do today that is better, that will enhance my craft? That is what I see as competition.
Absolutely.
So, why is it important for women, especially lone parents, to invest in real estate, learn budgeting, and invest to feel confident?
Real estate is tried and true. They're hard assets. Now, there's all sorts of ways to mess it up, like anything else. However, if you think it through and you make a commitment, it's phenomenally great. Okay, so I have tenants that pay my bills. That's wonderful because you can breathe. I started buying real estate in the 90s and I was not healed at all. I started buying 6-family apartments and I had a little business, was doing extremely well, making 6 figures in the 90s. And I bought another 6-family and then a 9-plex. I flipped a property. I started getting involved that way. When I hit the wall when I was 30 years old and I realized how messed up I was because of my toxic environment that I never healed, I needed to go really deep. So I left the religion, left my husband, which was just complete poison. But I didn't even know poison, except I was reading Tony Robbins and I was feeling good. And I'd go back there and I was feeling bad. And I was very confused. I had a split personality because I was trying to get success and then I was undercutting. But I had bought that real estate. And so I would focus on my real estate 3 days a week and my business. And then for 4 days every single week, I rented a room in a beautiful apartment right in Newton, Massachusetts, with a really cool woman. First time I ever had an inkling of what love was from another human was right around that time. But my real estate paid my bills. And I could think. So I wake up in the morning and I would take a long walk, or I would go to the gym and I would eat healthy food and I would decompress. I was in a beautiful area and it was my sanctuary. It was peace. And my real estate kept pumping out money. So I could think. I was like, I could have bought anything. I had so much money coming in. It was crazy. But I was a mess. And every day I would read for hours. And I would go to classes and I would learn and I would talk to people who I thought were safe because church wouldn't let me talk to people on the outside. So I was scared of the people outside. They were teaching fear all the time. So I was like embedded in fear between my mother, alcoholism, schizophrenia, and the cult, all that stuff. It was breeding fear. And so I was able to go to a safe haven and I started to heal. So that I would say is an amazing reason to have real estate. What if something happens? Not necessarily that. What if you get sick? Unless you have insurance, you could always go on social services, whatever. But I didn't have to do that. I was able to maintain everything. I didn't have to explain to anybody. I went into therapy, but I paid for the therapy myself. I went into any healing, I paid for it myself. So it gave me strength and I didn't feel like I was relying on anybody. So it strengthened me to have my own resources. So I would say that's a phenomenal reason to have a safety in case anything happens. If you're doing well and you're strong, start by accumulating some real estate that can help support you.
Thank you. I also see it as a means to create financial freedom for the person and maybe to leave something for their children if they have children, or for family members, even if they don't have children. That's how I see it. Thank you. So, what is the best way to create generational wealth?
Well, there's a lot of ways. Some ways I don't know. Currently, I'm studying a lot of commercial real estate. And if you can get involved with commercial real estate and maybe get ground leases in key areas, that's a really great way to get generational wealth. Rockefeller Plaza is not owned by, it's on a land lease. The Rockefellers knew this. Almost all of Union Square in San Francisco is owned multi-generationally. So these big money people bought in key areas, they bought the land and they built things on it. And now they're getting money for leases forever without maintaining the property. So the people who own the buildings maintain the property, they own the lease. So it's getting generational wealth without having all the hassle of being a landlord. Mobile home parks are another way. You just own the dirt and you let people own the individual units. So there's a lot of ways, but those are a couple that come to mind.
So you can build wealth or generational wealth by acquiring land, building maybe, like you said, houses, shops, or maybe a farmland and then lease it out. So it transfers from one generation to the other. Money is coming in regardless.
I just started investigating because real estate is highly demographically specific. So what's going to work here is not going to work where you're at, right? So just start looking around who's doing well and what are they doing, and then follow them.
Thank you. That leads me to my next question. Is there any way someone can get out of economic inequality, especially for lone parents?
How would you define the inequality?
The rich, middle class?
I can't speak globally. I'm not an economist, and every area is going to be different.
Yes.
Maybe the answer is move.
That's a good one.
Maybe the answer is move to another area, right? Where you can succeed. I mean, many people come to America for that reason. A lot of my friends who are very successful are immigrants. They are much more ambitious than the lazy Americans who take freedom for granted, but there's inequalities here. I would say hard work, smart work, get into areas, learn about entrepreneurism, learn about marketing, learn about negotiation, develop the high skill sets that are going to rise you above. And then commit on your time. Live very lean and simple, because the more stuff you get, the more time you have to manage it. But literally, there was a time in my life where, due to so many crazy changes, I was living in like a 100 square foot apartment. I had sold all my apartment houses. I got a divorce. I was ready to go to California, and I was going to roommate with somebody who'd end up flaking on me. I mean, you could take a shower, wash your hands, and work at your desk all at the same time. It was so tiny. But it was so liberating after managing so many apartment houses. I was there 6 months and it was phenomenal. So go lean, focus on high leverage. And again, what is your natural genius? What are your highest skills? A lot of people start off in IT. There's so many opportunities right now in tech to do very well, but pair your natural genius with what's the highest income that you could possibly make, bulk up your cash, save it, and then learn how to invest it. It's one thing to earn money. Some people are very good at earning money, but they have no idea how to invest it. Doctors are sometimes the worst investors. They don't know what to do with it. And that's because it's a completely different skill set. To answer your question, to get out of inequality, but pay attention to where you're living, go to an area where there's opportunity, go to a sector where there's opportunity, match your natural genius to the opportunity, and then live lean while you really catapult yourself to the next level. And then at that point, start learning how to invest for the long term.
Okay. So people also need to learn how to invest, not just making the money, just like you gave examples of doctors acquiring the money, but having no knowledge of where to invest their money. So, for example, maybe you make the money, you could invest in stocks, like you said, commercial property, tech, or health.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I remember someone telling me before Zoom became very prominent, which was due to COVID. Immediately she noticed that people were using Zoom more. She quickly invested and she's made a bit of money from doing that.
Oh, wow. Good for her. That's awesome. Yeah, so paying attention. There's that. Now, I've never been traditionally a great investor with the market. It's just a thing. But day trade for a while, that's probably why. There's an old Peter Lynch book, which was really good, Beating the Street, solid information. I think if I had drilled down on him instead of going to the day trading route, which I never should have done, I would have done very well because I have natural awareness. Women tend to have natural awareness. For example, you can tell Costco is a great company because it's always packed.
Yes.
So invest in Costco. I love Amazon. And then I remember my ex-boyfriend saying, the street doesn't like Amazon. I'm like, I like Amazon. And then Amazon blew up. And that's why Beating the Street by Peter Lynch. It's like, pay attention to what you buy and why you buy it because their customer service is so amazing. Just paying attention to the world around you.
So people should be more self-aware around their environment and what's going on in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Because matching your natural gifts and talents give you the right reinvesting strategy.
Some people are natural builders. They're a genius with building things. My contractors, they love it. They're creative when problem solving. And some people are natural people person. They love people. They love connections. Other people are natural systems thinkers. They can see the whole system and put things together. Those are broad categories, but you can become very wealthy just focusing on any one of those. Contractors can do phenomenal in real estate if they're natural builders, as long as they keep the numbers in line. The problem with contractors is sometimes they hate paperwork, and you need paperwork to get that going. So maybe teaming up with somebody who you can trust to do the paperwork. So people who are people persons, they could be great with sales. And sales has traditionally been like the most valuable, high dollars per hour enterprise that anybody's ever done. Sales is very powerful. And if you're good with people, if you're empathetic and you can direct people and you care and you love what you're doing, and you match that up, you can be very successful. If you're a natural systems thinker, my God, you can organize, manage people and create large organizations. So there's so much by focusing on what is your natural gifts. That's the ticket to fulfillment as well.
I was going to say that. Yeah, I'm going to use myself as an example. I love encouraging people. I see myself as a spiritual healer because I pray a lot. I encourage people maybe using the word of God to give them scriptures. Sometimes, if I'm permitted, I might lay hands, and I've done it in an open market. The man felt very relieved. He was Asian, I'm African, and I asked permission and I touched him because I just picked it up. I said, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" He said, "No, I'm actually not okay." He told me, "What's wrong?" I prayed with him. And before I left, he felt relieved and he was thankful. So if you've got, like you just rightly said, God-given gifts or divine gifts, let me use that word, tap into it, nurse it, and you'll go far.
Yeah, absolutely. Prayer is powerful. So what you did for that man was extraordinary. It's no joke. If you get a real person who can pray, boy, phew, it is an energy shift. It's real stuff. Yeah.
I would say that's my calling, and I like being creative. So, thank you. What are the biggest lessons you've learned in 30 years of investing? The second question is, what are top 3 books to read to get started?
One of the most important lessons in 30 years of real estate is to learn value. And that might sound a little vague, but it's a way of educating yourself. So, for example, if you buy a property, it's in a war zone, it has a certain value, right? If you buy an ugly house in a beautiful neighborhood, it has a different value. So pay attention to, if you're going to be in real estate, where is the highest value? And also, where do you feel comfortable investing? Would you feel comfortable investing in a war zone? Some people love it. They're good at it. Someone's got to be a landlord there. But that was not for me. but I didn't learn that right away. And I ended up accidentally buying one, and that wasn't good. So paying attention to and learning value in your area, learning your market, I think that would be a really important lesson. The other thing is if you hang on to something long enough in a decent area, it will appreciate.
Yes.
So if you find a deal, if you find something, don't get rid of it quickly unless you absolutely have to. Try to hold on to it if you can and accumulate. So it's better to have more small properties than sometimes flipping them. There's a higher tax, and holding on to them, you can let them appreciate. In California, the homes appreciate about double every 10 years. That's an average, double every 10 years. So if you can hang on for longer and build the wealth that way. However, recently I liquidated about 3/4 of my residential because I wanted to focus on commercial.
Yes.
Right. So at a certain point, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Other than that, I would say knowing who you are and knowing your identity, do the best that you can, understand that you have value, learning that early, and continue educating yourself. What you said earlier, constantly improving yourself. I think that was an important lesson as well. I don't know what the beginner books are right now. However, I think truly a good one is Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
So many people have been changed by that. I read it in the 90s and I thought, oh, this is cool. I started with Nothing Down by Robert Allen. That was in the 90s. Now, the numbers are different, but the concepts are really good. I still have Robert Allen's His Rules for Wealth. I've had it on my desk for 30 years. I think he has some phenomenal stuff. He really got me going. Carlton Sheets. I had some, those are the things that people classically got involved with. Today, I would start by watching Bigger Pockets because it's current, it's fresh, and it's YouTube. So I would say they'll get anybody going. Some of the Fortune Builder stuff is fantastic as well. If you want to get into commercial, I'd say anything from J. Scott Shield, get involved with that academy. That'll get anybody going.
Thank you. I've actually read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I will say nuggets of wisdom in that.
And he breaks it down very simply where anybody can get it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's changed quite a few people's lives that I know. It's fun to read. It's got good stories. He's got one of the best ghostwriters around. Sharon Lecter's.
Thank you. You were quite right. Even in the UK here, when you hold on to property, it appreciates, regardless whether small, just a simple flat, maisonette, or a ground, a 4 or 5 bedroom house. I would say between 8 to 10 years, it does appreciate massive. That is another way to generate or build wealth. But the difference between residential and commercial property, I think it's slightly vast.
It's slightly vast. Yes, agreed.
So people make more money from commercial property from the looks of things, because I've seen people who talk about it. So some of my colleagues decided to go into commercial property because of the leases. And not only that, because when you have residential properties and your tenants damage anything, you tend to spend more. But for commercial property, if it's a bank that you gave the lease to, is mandatory for the bank. They've got the money to repair
Right.
whatever damage is done to the property. So I guess this was what you looked at and you decided no more residential, I'm converting everything to commercial property.
Exactly.
And it's paying off for you.
Yeah.
That leads me to another question. An important and real life situations many people face is escaping an abusive relationship. How can such persons bounce back and eventually build financial independence? I know you've partially answered the question, but can you elaborate more, please?
So they've already left or they're thinking of leaving?
Both ways.
Okay, so if you're thinking of leaving, obviously challenging with children, and I can't really speak to that, but everything comes down to focus. First of all, you need to believe that something else is better. And even if you don't believe something is better, you have to think that something's better for you. Somebody believes there's something better for you. There's something better out there. Okay. Because in the universe of possibilities on this planet, there's something better for this person. I didn't know when I was in an abusive situation what better was. I didn't know life could be good. I didn't know. But there is something true about the human spirit. If you dig deep into who you are, there has to be something better. You may not know what it is, you may not have ever seen it before, but that you have to know that there's something better and that you can have that better. And if you don't believe it, choose to believe it anyway. Just say, God, universe, I think there's something better for me. Show me, give me faith that there's something better for me in your mind all the time. Like, really have to focus. This is the only thing you can control, is what's here, even though it seems like it controls you sometimes. And that's why I think writing down affirmations are important, because the mind gets all crazy and you get all the emotions, fear, terror, PTSD, like all this stuff is real. So sit and write down. Start with a belief that there can be something better. And then you need to reprogram your brain. You need to brainwash yourself to believe that there's something better for you. So we have to spend our time doing something. And there's nothing more important than reprogramming, rewiring your brain for health, healing, positivity, financial independence, upward and onward. There's nothing more important. So wherever you are, look around you, ask for help. Number one, have faith that people want to help. Focus. No matter where you're at, it can get better. And you have to absolutely commit. You have to commit to it. You have to want it. And it's not going to be an easy road, but you have to have a road somewhere. If you're in an abusive relationship, I've been there. It's hard. You can really be happy. It's going to be bumpy, but you don't ever want to go back there. So honestly, right now, I don't even remember. Like, I have to go back into my memory banks to all that craziness and horribleness. My mother was hanging around with murderers. I have had multiple suicides in my family, murders in family, friends, just craziness, that cultish religion, all of that stuff. So I don't even go back there in my brain. It's like a bad movie. But anybody in that situation, you can rise above. There's absolutely no doubt. But you need to focus on healing. Just write down what it is you want. I want to be healed. I want to be financially independent. And then choose to have faith that the universe will lead you, because that is how it works. The universe will lead you out of this, and know that you deserve it. There's 1,000 resources, but what it comes down to is just choosing, no matter how hard it is. I know, God, there's something better for me. And I'm going to start looking. You can affirm in your mind. You can say, I see better possibilities for me. I see financial independence for me. I am drawing in financial independence for me. Literally, you just do that. It's the law of the universe, and it works. It keeps working for me. And I just can't believe how phenomenal my life is now. But I can believe it, actually.
Yes.
Choosing to believe when you don't see evidence.
Yeah.
That's what faith is. That's why
Yeah.
the Bible keeps talking about faith, getting rid of fear. I choose faith, even though I don't see anything better.
It says faith without works is dead. So you need to have the faith and also put in the work, so to speak.
Well, I think the work is the affirming and praying, the armor of God, the helmet of salvation. There's a reason for that analogy, because there's the toxic environment is trying to get into our mind. But if we have a helmet of strength around our mind, we can protect our mind. We have to stand guarded at the door of our mind, not just let anybody say anything.
Tamper with that thought process. Thank you. So, are there any local programs for abuse survivors that can offer business training? I'm not sure whether it's applicable in America. Community investment programs or groups to make property ownership more accessible.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. What I do know is there's Al-Anon. It's a place for people who are related to or connected to people who are abusing alcohol and they're in dysfunctional relationships. So Al-Anon helps the parents, children, wives, all of that. And that I think is a good place to start. Sometimes the Chamber of Commerce will have business people who will lend out their expertise to people. They'll help women. And I know of different programs, but I haven't taken advantage of all of them. But there are definitely opportunities. I would just Google them and then start asking around.
Thank you. I think in the UK we have cooperatives. Some startups help survivors to gain financial literacy, so to speak, and some other organizations. I know the Salvation Army, apart from helping with food and clothing, I think they give some training as well. So, yeah.
We always have our libraries. That's where I started. Because you can have no money, but you can look around and there are going to be books.
That's true. That's where you get fantastic resources. When it comes to books, you can get financial books on property or
anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've read over 1,000 books on personal development, spirituality, money, business. And so that's where you go. Yeah.
That's a lot, though.
It's a lot. Sometimes I look at my book, I'm like, could I be that old to have read all these books?
But it's worth it. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What are your last words of encouragement?
Know that you can change your life beyond what you would have comprehended. But you need to take control of your life. You need to extricate yourself from toxic people. Do the best that you can. You got to be really hard on yourself, your own weaknesses, strengthen your weaknesses, heal your weaknesses, and find refuge in positive environments. Do positive affirmations. I belong to a center for spiritual living, and it just teaches you, if you're going to pray, pray affirmatively. Choose to have faith that you can rise above anything that you're involved in, and you can literally do a 180. You would not recognize your environment in just a couple of years, depending on how much you focus. You can get yourself to safety quickly, and then you can learn and learn. You really want to live a life of abundance, faith, creativity, joy, spiritual expansion, healing, and growth. That's really the goal. Healing the dark past is doable. Your mind is like a dirty bucket full of poisons and toxicities and mud. And then if you keep pouring clean, fresh water and then filter the water that's going in your mind and get rid of the dirt and pay attention to what's going on here, when you catch yourself getting upset, angry, whatever, just keep focusing on what you want by your affirmations, speaking them out loud. Once your bucket is filled with clear water, your life will change.
Thank you so much. That is really amazing. So, listeners and viewers, you've heard Ginger Faith. Heal your weaknesses, have faith, and dwell in possibilities. Believe it is possible and be positive about it and go out and do it. On that note, listeners and viewers, we've come to the end of today's show on Rising Above Shadows of Abuse, Raza. Thank you so much, Ginger, for coming on the show. We really appreciate your heartfelt inspiration, motivation, as well as the way you've educated us in terms of being our best version for ourselves and what you can do to build generational wealth. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for bringing up this very important subject for people.
You're welcome. So that's it, viewers and listeners. See you on the next episode. Be safe and be positive. And don't forget to check out our social media handles for more videos and reels on this show. Bye for now.